This is the story of a chest containing $1 to $2 million worth of jewels and gold. A tale filled with excitement, joy, and adventure, but also a tale of death, sorrow, and greed. This is the search for the Forrest Fenn treasure.
I was in Uruguay in the 90s. We were looking at shipwrecks out there, and the project leader for that project was a fellow by the name of Forrest Fenn. But Creighton and I spent a lot of time together, and we were in Uruguay, and neither of us speak Spanish, so we spent a lot of time with one another, telling stories and stuff like that. And I heard about Creighton's eccentric uncle, Forrest. And I was kind of interested in him. When I got back to the States, I started paying attention to Forrest's website because he had photos on his website of some of his most magnificent items in his collection.
This is Dan Neitzel. He had a blog dedicated to documenting all news surrounding the Forrest Fenn treasure, along with a YouTube account featuring Fenn discussing life stories and all the things he got up to before this begun.
My original intention for the blog was just I was looking for a place to put these videos. I didn't just want to throw them up on YouTube because I wanted to have a conversation about them. I wanted people to be able to talk about them, to say things to me about them. I shot the videos, a first series of videos with him because it became clear to me that the searchers really didn't know who Forrest was, and that perhaps the key to figuring the hints in the poem out would be to know something about Forrest himself.
Forrest was born in 1930 to Lily and William Fenn. While growing up in Temple, Texas, his fondest memories came during the summer, when his family would vacation to Yellowstone National Park, spending most of his time fly fishing and exploring the mountains.
He couldn't afford college, and his family couldn't afford to send him to school. So he tried. He went with his buddies to Texas A&M University, which is a live-in university, kind of a military school where they issue uniforms in a dormitory and things like that. And they didn't know that he wasn't an official student, but so they gave him a set of uniforms and a bunk to sleep in, and he thought he was in college. He actually even attended a couple of classes, I guess, before they figured out that he hadn't paid any money. And he heard his name announced over the PA system on campus, and he knew the jig was up, so he took off and went home. And a couple years later, he found himself in the Air Force. The Korean War had just begun in the United States, and so if you were of draftable age at that point, you were likely going to end up in the Army in Korea.
Despite not having the education other people had around him, he excelled at pilot and jet school and later became an instructor before getting involved in the Vietnam War.
At some point, he ended up in Vietnam. He got shot down twice. He flew F-100s, and I can't remember how many trips he went on out there, but he flew a lot. And he was pretty exhausted. He evaded getting captured at one point, the last time he was shot down. And when he got out, he decided he was never going to do anything again that required him to dress up or required him to tie a watch to his wrist.
After serving his time, Forrest would later come to riches after entering the art business.
And so he started a gallery, and it became arguably one of the most financially successful galleries in Santa Fe. And if any of your listeners have been out to Santa Fe, they know that that's saying a lot, because Santa Fe is all about galleries and art. And Forrest set a precedent there for galleries and how to do business and running a gallery, and he's still admired in that place today, even though he sold his gallery 30 years ago. He revolutionized the gallery business around Santa Fe, and made a colossal amount of money for himself, and that was where his wealth came from. But he also still enjoyed trading, that is, getting together with other folks who collected the kinds of things that he collected, not just the art that he sold in his gallery, but his prehistoric and historic items and artifacts that he collected, and trading them with others. And he was always a collector. He collected everything. When he was a kid, he collected string. I mean, it started like that, and then he couldn't help. He collected anything, whatever there was to collect, he collected it, and he had this magnificent collection of stuff that he had collected, by the time he was, 50 years old.
But one day, Forrest was rushed to hospital. The results came back. It was cancer.
Things are rolling along good, and then, as life would have it, he discovers that he has incurable cancer, terminal cancer, in 1988. And, this is not fun to find out. And so Forrest decides that he's going to do something about this. First of all, he's seen others, and he's been around others who have died from cancer, and he knows how it works. You go around for as long as you can, and then you get sick, and you end up in a hospital with hoses up your nose, and everybody standing around your bedside crying. And he didn't want it. He didn't want that for himself. He wanted to end his life on his own term. And interesting, his dad had died of terminal cancer. Well, his dad didn't die of terminal cancer. His dad ended his own life shortly before the cancer would have debilitated him, so that he wouldn't end his life in a hospital with hoses up his nose. So Forrest pretty much made the same decision for himself. That wasn't going to happen. And Forrest, being an outdoorsman and connected heavily with the West, he decided that there was a special place to him that he really appreciated, and he wanted to go back there, and he wanted to die in that place, not in a hospital, but outdoors, in the West, in the mountains, in a place that he loved and appreciated for its beauty. And so he made a plan, and he decided to write a poem, and he started filling a chest with some of his own special collected objects, items, and he filled this chest up with those objects, wrote a poem that ended something like, "Take the chest but leave my bones alone." And the idea was he was going to go out there, take 50 sleeping pills with his chest, that he would die with his chest out there in this place, and that he would leave this poem back, and somebody would find the poem maybe 50 years, maybe 60 years, maybe 10 years from now, and they would come looking for this place. And Forrest would still be there, obviously as a decomposed skeleton, and his chest would be there. And if you could figure out the clues in the poem and find the place, leave Forrest alone, but go ahead and take the chest. It's yours.
But then something happened that Forrest didn't account for. He got better. After surviving cancer, Forrest still liked the idea of having a real treasure hunt for the world to enjoy. It would be a nice way to get the children off the couch and explore the world around them. So, for the next decade and a half, whenever he got chance, he would spend time perfecting the poem. And in 2010, he released an autobiography of his life titled The Thrill of the Chase, stating that a treasure was hidden somewhere within the Rocky Mountains, and the only way to find it was a finalized poem placed inside.
As I have gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and old. Begin it where warm waters halt, and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home of Brown. From there it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease. But tarry scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answers I already know. I've done it tired and now I'm weak. So hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. If you've been brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold.
Forrest mentioned that the poem had 9 clues that would help you locate the treasure. He then went one step further and told us that the first clue begins on the opening line on the second stanza. Begin it where warm waters halt.
What the hell does that mean? Begin it where warm waters halt. We need more information. I mean, that could be anything from the sink, what sink, but a sink, to a thermal event at Yellowstone National Park. My first idea was where warm waters of the Rio Grande become cold when they get infused with other waters. There were thousands of interpretations for begin it where warm waters halt.
Of course, there were skeptics upon the book's release, claiming the treasure to be a hoax and only created to boost profits on book sales.
But I didn't want anyone to say that the treasure chest is a hoax to make money on the book.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't make one penny on it. I don't even get my publishing costs back.
This is not a publicity stunt,
It's not
in
a
other
pub-
words.
With more media coverage and interviews with the man behind it all, an active following was starting to take place. Forrest would receive hundreds of emails daily, more interviews started coming forward, including a documentary called The Lure, speaking to several individuals who are actively searching for the chest and explaining what they do if they ever found it. As the participants grew and the years went on with no luck, some started to become impatient, leading to more extreme and desperate measures to be distributed in order to find this chest.
Treasure hunts are supposed to be a lot of fun. I mean, that's why they're started. That's why people start them in their own backyards. You can have a little scavenger hunt, or you can have a little treasure hunt for the kids, and you put clues together. And everything is supposed to be fun. But I can tell you that there was a lot of fun for Forrest in this treasure hunt, but there was a lot of it that was not fun. Forrest gave us hints and clues along the way that were in addition to the poem. For instance, he told us that the treasure was hidden at least 8.25 miles. Actually, what he said was 66,000 links north of Santa Fe. What he was doing when he said that was telling people that it's not at his house. Don't bother looking in my house. Don't bother coming to my house. It's not in my house. It's at least 8.25 miles north of my house. But some people don't understand things like that. There was a fellow who wrote Forrest, who was emailing Forrest, and telling him that he figured out who the treasure was, that the treasure was really his granddaughter, and that this guy was coming to get his granddaughter. And not only was it a crazy idea, he also wrote Forrest to tell him he was doing it. They didn't really take him seriously. I mean, they were watching it, but they didn't know. This is ridiculous. I don't know what he's after, but nobody's going to do that. But the guy did. He lived out near Las Vegas somewhere, I think, and he headed to Forrest's house, and he wrote Forrest and told him he was on his way, that he was coming for his granddaughter because he knew that she was the treasure. And Forrest began to take it more seriously as he wrote more letters as he was getting closer to Santa Fe. So he alerted the cops, state police, went looking for this guy, and they found him on the road headed to Santa Fe. And yes, that was his intention. And they ended up turning him back, telling him, stay out of New Mexico. And even though, he had written those notes, they gave him a second chance. They said, just, turn around, go back home, and everything's going to be fine. Well, guy did that, but then something went wrong again, and he headed back toward Forrest. Told him he was coming again, and the second time they tossed him in jail for his threats, making threats, and they had him in writing on the email. So I mean, things like that happened to Forrest, and his family was certainly concerned about this. I don't think very many of his family thought this was a good idea from the beginning. I think some of his family saw the potential for crazy people.
And it only got worse from here.
Once Forrest's email and phone were figured out, and his address, I mean, it was all over for him in terms of privacy. So there was a lot of threats to his family. There were a lot of threats to him personally. There were people trying to break in. They would climb his fence. They would try to bust down the gate to get into his place because they figured it was hidden on his property, even though they said it wasn't. And at one point, he had to drive somebody away from his house who had broken in, climbed the fence, and was threatening him. And he had to pull a gun on him and hold him until the police came to get the guy, take him away.
Tensions were building. People were getting more ambitious on their travels. Less precautions were being taken. It really felt like something even worse was just around the corner. On the 5th of January 2016, Randy Bilyeu and his dog headed out into the Rocky Mountains in hopes to be the lucky one in finding the chest. After no contact for several days, his ex-wife reported him missing. A search party was dispatched and his dog was discovered on a raft, but Randy was nowhere to be found. That was the first of 5 deaths in total. On June 9th in 2017, Jeff Murphy fell 500 feet to his death while searching Yellowstone National Park. Pastor Paris Wallace had failed to show up to a planned family meeting a few days later. His body was found downstream along the Rio Grande, 7 miles away from his parked car near the Taos Junction Bridge. The family had been told by Wallace a few days prior that he had planned to go in search for a hidden treasure. Eric Ashby was found dead on the 24th of July 2017 in the Arkansas River after moving to Colorado in hopes to find Fenn's treasure. Michael Wayne Saxon was found deceased on the 21st of March 2020 with an unnamed man. They had both rented out snowmobiles and had planned to explore Dinosaur National Monument along the Utah-Colorado border for the treasure. They traveled without dressing appropriately for the conditions and eventually found themselves stuck in a situation that required them to be rescued. But unfortunately, the rescue team had found them after Michael had passed. Many blamed Forrest for the deaths that occurred. Even the leader of the New Mexico State Police asked Fenn to call off the search, which Fenn denied. In one article, he was reported to have said, "If someone drowns in a swimming pool, we shouldn't drain the pool, we should teach people to swim."
And that's the key to this, is Forrest has said all along, right from the very beginning. He said, listen, this chest, was hidden by a guy who was 79 years old at the time. It's not in a dangerous place. We knew from the beginning you didn't have to scale a mountain or rappel down a cliff in order to find this thing. Most of us with common sense anyway knew this. Forrest invented this whole treasure chest. He envisioned it for families. He envisioned it for kids. It wasn't in a dangerous place. We all knew that. Apparently some of us didn't, and folks would let their imaginations get away from them, and they would find themselves in dangerous places, and some of them got hurt and some of them died as a result of putting themselves in those places.
We have new information about a real-life treasure hunt that hooked people all over the world. And if you were still hoping to find this treasure, it's not really good news for you.
June 6th, 2020, Forrest announced to the world that his treasure chest had in fact been found. Multiple news outlets covered the story, social media pages dedicated to the chase blew up, along with several videos uploaded online giving their own thoughts.
I was picking myself up off the floor. When I got up in the morning, I checked my email, the blog. I get anywhere between 500 and 600 emails a day because of the blog. So I'm going through my emails, and there's one in there from Forrest. So I look at that first, and it says, Dale, the chest has been found. I'll make an important announcement later on. Hang on. Oh, I've got to go to town. I've got an appointment. All this has been scheduled. I'm thinking, what the hell? So first of all, I'm saying to myself, no, this is a hoax. This isn't really Forrest that wrote me this note. This email just happens to look like it comes from Forrest. So I contacted Forrest and I said, Forrest, did you send me an email this morning? And he said, yes, I did. And he said, yes, the chest has been found. And he said, there'll be more information coming later on. I said, well, Forrest, I've got to take my van in. I'm going to be gone most of the day. And he said, that's okay. He said, it'll take a while to get this straightened out.
Forrest said in his statement that the finder had asked to remain anonymous and to keep the location of where the treasure was found a secret. Respecting his wishes, Forrest only revealed that the finder was a man from back east. The man had confirmed that he had found the chest by sending Fenn a picture of it.
That was momentous. You look at the statistics for the blog when we made that announcement. The spike is like, it was pretty important information for everybody. I mean, you understand that in the United States, this treasure hunt was not something that a few thousand people were looking for. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people were looking for this chest, and not just from the United States. I mean, on the blog we had people from New Zealand, the UK, Germany, France, Turkey, South American countries, Canada certainly. I mean, folks were from everywhere that were interested in this chest. And part of the reason for that is because there was a poem with 9 clues. And that poem with 9 clues was a puzzle. You had to figure that out before you could go looking for the chest. You had to have a solution. You had to have looked at the poem, figured out what the 9 clues were, and then you had an idea about where to go to look for the chest.
This didn't sit too well with many people. Hundreds began filling the subreddits claiming the whole thing was a complete hoax, and Forrest was choosing not to reveal the man's identity or how the poem was solved because none of it was real to begin with. Even more complications grew to the surface after a woman by the name of Barbara Anderson claimed that she was the true finder of the chest, and this mysterious man had been texting her threats before hacking into her computer and stealing the solved poem, then traveling to the location and taking the chest before she could get there herself. She filed a lawsuit on Forrest and the anonymous finder, asking them to hand over what was rightfully hers. Although there was one slight problem. She claimed that the chest was in the state of New Mexico, despite Forrest confirming that it was actually in the state of Wyoming.
Well, first of all, let me say that she's not the only person who's come up with that claim. Lots of people have come up with that claim. And what's interesting to me about it is that none of these people have the same solution. In other words, there's 35 people out there who are attempting to sue Forrest because they had the solution before it was found, and none of their solutions are the same. So, clearly it's just a bunch of people trying to take advantage of Forrest.
Everything just seemed to be getting worse. A portion of the community had turned on Forrest. Certain media outlets seemed to be siding with them too due to the lack of evidence that the finder really existed. It was all just becoming too much. On September 7th, 2020, Forrest Fenn passed away at the age of 90. He died of natural causes. friends and family took time to mourn, along with a strange post cropping up on medium.com, a site that allows you to post your own essays anonymously. The title was A Remembrance of Forrest Fenn. The finder was in the URL, and in the bio, the account reads, "The author is the finder and owner of the Forrest Fenn treasure." The individual details about his discovery of Forrest and his treasure. He first heard and developed an obsession with Fenn back in 2018. Wanting to know every ins and outs about the man who hid the chest, he began scouring the internet for all the interviews and press conferences recorded that featured Fenn talking about it. Due to a few minor slip-ups that apparently no one else had seemed to have picked up on, within 3 weeks, the man claimed he had figured out the area of where the treasure was hidden. It was just a case of figuring out the exact spot. Spending approximately 25 days searching around the area eventually led him to finding the chest. But of course, people were still skeptical. The conspiracies ranged from this is a friend of Forrest, or it was Forrest himself who had planned to release this after he died. But just when we thought the twists and turns wouldn't stop in this final hurdle, on December 7th, 2020, the finder stepped forward, revealing his identity.
My name is Jack Stowe, and I'm the finder of the Forrest Fenn treasure. I searched for it for 2 years, and on June 6th of this year, I retrieved the treasure from the place I found it in Wyoming. The same place Forrest hid it 10 years ago. For the past 6 months, I have remained anonymous, not because I have anything to hide, but because Forrest and his family endured stalkers, death threats, home invasions, frivolous lawsuits, and a potential kidnapping. All at the hands of people with delusions related to his treasure. I don't want those things to happen to me and my family. The U.S. District Court for New Mexico has ruled that Forrest's estate must provide some of my personal information to a woman I do not know and with whom I have never communicated, who has brought a meritless lawsuit against me. This would make my name a matter of public record, so I chose to come forward today. Since finding the treasure, I moved to a more secure building with guards and multiple levels of security, and I have taken appropriate measures to protect myself.
Jack Stowe was our finder. Confirmed by relatives of Forrest Fenn, he goes on to explain that the reason he didn't want to reveal how the poem was solved was because he doesn't want to run the risk of people traveling to that location and accidentally damaging the area, or, even worse, pillaging it, in hopes that maybe one of the items had dropped out of the chest while Jack or Forrest was making the rounds to their car. He had dropped an email address for people to message, most likely using it as a way to deviate any hatred away from any personal emails that might be online elsewhere. But to his surprise, he received the complete opposite. People were congratulating him. In fact, the majority of the emails, or at least from what he could see, were overwhelmingly positive. Upon getting this unexpected response, he made a follow-up post to thank everyone who did this.
When I interviewed Dan Barbarisi, he told me, from his reporting the last few years, he believes there's a silent majority of good and decent people who took up this adventure.
I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. There were an estimated 350,000 people who partook in this treasure hunt, according to Fenn. And if you look at the amount of posts regarding conspiracies and people who actively tried causing problems to Forrest's family, it is an incredibly small amount in comparison. Don't get me wrong, these people shouldn't go ignored, but we still need to acknowledge these small groups of individuals do not represent the entire community that took part. Most people simply got involved for a bit of fun and did nothing more than that. To conclude the story, on January 25th, 2021, the case between the Fenn family and Miss Anderson was dismissed without prejudice. While there are still active people out there hoping for more answers, or that Jack will explain how the poem was solved, I think the main portion of our tale has come to a close. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.